Let's learn how to write a bubble sort in JavaScript. We could just use the sort method, but that only works for strings. We could use a lambda expression to work with integers, but what we want to do is we want to have two arrays that we want to work with, and we want those arrays to be correlated, meaning the first element of one array correlates or matches the first element of the other array. So how would we do something like that? Let's go ahead and create a brand new file using our Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to save that file. And I'm going to just call it sortit.html. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the basic HTML code. And I've added some script tags. So go ahead and get to that point. Hopefully now you're to that point. We want to go ahead and create some code. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and work with an array. So I'm going to put an array in there. And var, I'll call mine AS team names using camel case and Hungariantation is equal to, and we're going to make it an array, and the first element, which is position 0, will be the thunder. The second element will be the blazers. The third element will be the nuggets. The fourth element will be the jazz. And the last element will be the Timberwolves. So that's going to be our first array, and it has 5 elements in that array. Now the second array I want to work with, that's going to be an array of numbers. And I just called mine AI team wins. Element 0 is the Thunder. They've got 34 wins. The Blazers have 32. The Nuggets have 37. The Jazz 30. The Timberwolves 25. And so if you ever access the first element of this array, we know that this represents the number of wins that team currently has. So position 0 of this array corresponds with position 0 of that array. Now I could have just come in and sorted that and said AS team names dot sort to do an ascending sort. But if you ascending sort this array, you'll see Blazers, Jazz, Nuggets, Thunder, and Timberwolves. But this is not automatically linked to this array. So that wouldn't work for us. And if I came in and just did a sort on AI team wins, and I could have said dot sort and use what we call an arrow function, this would just sort this array of numbers in ascending order, but it wouldn't do anything with this array. So what we need to do is we need to write our own code to sort the array, and we're going to use something called a bubble sort. Now on a bubble sort, we have a value, and we want to bubble the lowest value to the top and go in descending order, or you could do ascending order. We're going to do descending order though. And what the logic behind it is that you're going to grab 2 elements at a time from the array and determine if one is greater than the other. For instance, if 34 is greater than 32, we know that the code needs to swap those 2 elements so that it would be 32, 34 in the first 2 positions. But at the same time, you'd have to swap the other array also. Now in order to swap those things, you can't just say this array position is equal to the new value, because if you do that, if you said 34 is equal to 32, this position gets wiped out. AI team wins, bracket 0 bracket is equal to 32. 34 is now gone. And so we need to make sure that we have temporary variables holding off values for when we do the swap. Otherwise, they'll disappear. So we're going to create some other variables. var s hold team this will be the temp hold for the name, and then var I hold wins, and this will be the temp hold for the wins. We want another variable. I'll call it I length, camel case, is equal to as team names dot length. Now I didn't need to do that. I could have just used this variable just like this, but I just want to use that one variable so I don't have to keep referring back. And then I'm going to need some counters. Now the way we have to do this is that you have to have a loop within a loop. The outer loop will be in charge of going through the entire array by comparing this to everything. But then we need another loop that actually says for each one that we do, we have to look at everybody inside of this. So we have an outer loop pulling one element at a time, and an inner loop saying, now that we have the outer element, let's look at everybody else. Outer element, look at everybody else. Outer element, look at everybody else. And you'll continue to do that until the whole array has been processed multiple times. Here's how you do that. Let's create two variables. Var, we'll call it iOuter, and have another one, we'll call it iInner. And we can even add the word count on there if you want to be a little more specific. It's up to you. Here's where we need our loop. For iOuter count equal to 0, because we want to start the very first element of this array. And we want to go all the way until the iOuter count is still less than the length of the array minus 1. Now, why do you think we want to go minus 1? We're going to find out that once we get to this point of sorting, we don't need to do the last element because everything's already been in place. So we'll start with the first one, sort it, the second one, sort it, third one, fourth one. By then, all that's left is the last position. So that's why we say the length minus 1, because we don't need to do that last position. And then we'll say iOuter count plus plus, so that we'll keep incrementing. So this loop will start at position 0 and then check its value against all other values in the array. Let's do the inner loop. For inner count is equal to. Now we don't need to start at this position because that's what this variable already represents. So we really want to start at the next position. And the way we do that is by saying iOuter count plus 1. So when we first start in the loop, we're going to look at 0, 1 for the element. And we want to stay in that loop as long as iInner count is less than the length of the array. And then we'll go ahead and increment iInner count. And you'll understand this more once we start to run it. Now what we want to do is we need to do some comparisons. So now we say, since we have two elements, if the array AI team wins bracket I outer count is less than AI team wins bracket I inner count, we need to do a swap. We need to swap the values of those elements in the array. But remember, we can't just swap them. I can't just say I team wins bracket I outer count equals AI team wins bracket I inner count, because that means we would lose the value in this position. So the first thing we need to do is we need to hold off data. So we'll say I hold wins, that was our little holding variable we created, is equal to AI team wins bracket, and you can do it however you want. I'm going to go ahead and store off the I inner count value, and I'm going to do the same thing for the team name, because I don't want to lose that either. I've now held off those values. Since I've held those values off, now I can go ahead and do the following. I can now say AI team wins bracket inner count is equal to the AI team wins outer count. Let's do that same thing to store the team name. I'm just going to copy and paste, if I can do that correctly. So now we say we stored off whatever was in AI team wins and AI team names in the position I inner count, which was 1. We stored that off to the variables. Now we go and grab whatever in position 0, which is going to be 34 and Thunder. We assign 34 to position 1, so that now becomes 34, and we assign Thunder position 1 there. So the last thing for us to do is to store back our hold variables. So we'll say AI team wins bracket I outer count equals I hold wins, and AS team names bracket I outer count equals S hold team. And so that comes back up to here now and says, let's put the Blazers there and the value 32 there. So it made that first switch because 32 was less than 34. Then it comes up to here and increments inner count. So now the second time it looks at 0 and 2. And it says, is what's in position 2 less than what's in position 1? Here's position 2 and 1, or 0, sorry. And it says, no, it's not. Okay, leave it the way it is. Increment. Third time, it now looks at 0 and 3. Is that, actually 3, position 3, right here, less than that? Yes, it is. Okay, it needs to do the swap. So 30 goes here, Jazz goes here, and we increment the variable. 0, 4. I'm going to go ahead and do this. In the very end, I'll put everything back the way it was. There's our swap. So the Jazz go there, and the Blazers go there. Now we look at 0 and 4. Is 4 less than what's in position 0? Yes, it is. So now we need to swap 25 and 30. Timberwolves go there. The Jazz go there. We increment I inner count. It goes to 5. Is 5 less than 5? False. Come up to here. Increment outer count. So now it goes to 1. Now we drop down and we look at 1, 1. Well, why didn't we start at 0 again? Because we know that Timberwolves and 25 are already the lowest value in ascending order, and so we don't need to touch that again. So now we repeat the same process, but we look at 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. Come back. 2, 3, 2, 4. Come back. Outer count goes to 4. Is 4 less than the length minus 1, which is 4? No. Get out of the loop. It should all be sorted. Let's go ahead and put this back the way it was in the beginning, which was thunder at 34 and blazers at 32. Nuggets were 37. Jazz, Timberwolves, and they were 25. That's the data we had to start with. And let's go ahead and save that data. And let's go ahead and run that data. And I'm going to run that data because I have something called Go Live. Let me bring it down here to the bottom and you can see what we have. I have the Go Live extension installed. So when we go to run this, we'll actually see it show up in a browser. But before we do run it, one other thing we have to do. We need to print off the contents of both those arrays. Make sure that you are outside of those for loops. And we want to come in here and we want to say alert the array. And I'm going to go ahead and join it with a /n. And that way we'll see each element of the array print on a different line rather than separated by a comma. And I want to do that both for the names and the wins. So after you do that, let's go ahead and save it. And let's go ahead and run that and see what happens. Okay, now in this case it says Nuggets, Thunder, Blazers, Jazz, T-Wolves. 37, 34, 30, 25. Well, what happened? When we go take a look at the actual code, we see that there's this little sign right here. And we said if this value is less than this value, we want to go ahead and switch it. I wonder what would happen if I made that be a greater than sign. So that I look at the ending position, or the position that's deeper in the array compared to the outer. Let's go ahead and run that one more time and see what happens. Now it shows up T-Wolves, Jazz, Blazer, Thunder, Nuggets, 25, 30, 32, 34, 37. So if you want to see an ascending sort, you'll set the outer loop first and compare it to greater than the inner loop. We could have done this. I could have said the inner loop less than and do the same type of thing. It all depends on how you look at it. But if you go with this route of checking the outer number to the inner number, this is an ascending sort, and that is a descending sort. So let me go ahead and put a comment there. We'll save that one more time. Make sure we're right. So if we have the greater than sign, we should see an ascending sort. So T-Wolves should show up first, and the lower number shows up first. If you flip it the other way and say greater than, let's save that one more time, run it. That should now be a descending sort, so nuggets show up first. And remember, it's not based upon this value, but it's based upon the numeric value. And that's how you can use a bubble sort and sort multiple arrays and keep them linked or correlated.